The party continues in Chicago. The Chicago River dyed blue. There are the Cubbies making their way to Grant Park, Lower Hutchinson Field to be exact. It started off at Wrigley Field. It will end in a massive rally. They're traveling along Michigan Avenue between Oak Street and Ohio Street, then along Columbus Drive between Monroe and Balboa Avenue. The largest parade to celebrate a sports team was in Boston to celebrate the 2004 Red Sox team that broke the curse of the Bambino. That was an estimated 3 million people. Will Chicago break the curse of the Billy Goat and end their 107-year drought and eclipse that mark? Well, so far, it's looking good.
Let's go up above with Sarah Gendra. See what do you see? Can you see what I see?
Great seeing in Chicago. We expect the win is starting to sink in for the Cubs players. But what about the fans? For that, we turn to Meb Keflezighi, the digital editor of the Sports Illustrated Group, also New York Times best-selling author. Mark, did you ever think you'd see this day?
No, of course not. You're a Cubs fan. Why would you ever anticipate winning? I mean, you know rationally that at some point the Cubs have to win, or at least you think that rationally they might. But it never really seemed like it would happen until, I think, when they hired Theo Epstein. A lot of people thought, like, okay, if we just hang in here with this process, and that eventually he will break our curse the way he did in Boston as well.
Well, Mark, we were following your Game 7 experience on social media. We decided to pull some of our favorite tweets of yours to sort of go the tick-tock of what you were feeling. This one came at 10:23 p.m. You said, "I am eating my emotions with the sausage queso recipe that your friend Scott taught you." I like that one. Eating your emotions.
Eating your emotions, right? Sometimes you have to eat your feelings. And so it was, I mean, the stress level was so high, and it felt like we were going to be there a while. So yeah, my friend Scott taught me the sausage queso recipe. It's kind of my go-to for big sporting events.
Well, it continued on just about an hour later. This is 11:24 p.m. Oh my God, they have to stop this game for the rain.
That game was so ridiculous in so many ways, right? Just the emotional roller coaster. You know, as you would think you're up 5-1, like, oh, we're going to be great. Even you're up 6-3, and there's no Cubs fan on the planet who felt comfortable in that game, right?
We could see
not one.
How uncomfortable you were, because this tweet came in at 11:55 p.m. Rain delay. Holy bleep.
Yeah, it was like, just the fact that there was then a rain delay where you sort of pause, you know, the Indians, David hits home run, they come back, and there's this pause. It's like, how long is this even going to be? Like, is it going to be 2:30 in the morning before they start playing again? Like, everybody's looking at weather radar, and like suddenly everyone on Twitter is a meteorologist.
Yes, right? Amateur meteorologist. And then finally, 12:44 a.m. Thursday morning. This one comes in from you. This is just beyond all comprehension. So tell us, where were you watching this game and sending these tweets from?
I mean, I'm hunkered in my living room. It's sort of like I couldn't even watch it with another person. So I'm in my living room. My wife's there. She had fallen asleep for a while and then woke back up and was watching the end of it with me. I'm instant messaging my best friend in Chicago, who finally had to leave the bar that he was at in Evanston because it was shutting down. So he went during the rain delay.
Just to shut the bar down.
He went during the rain delay back to his house, and we were constantly messaging back and forth and just trying to, holy bleep, it was right.
For so long, the identity of the Cubs and their fan base was hard luck. You know,
lovable losers.
Lovable losers. Does that identity change in the last 2 days?
Yeah, you won. You're not lovable losers anymore. Like, lovable loser still has loser in it, right? And there was always this sense that the Cubs didn't try very hard as an organization because they had the history and Wrigley Field and a really loyal fan base, WGN getting them a nationwide following. There was always this sense that they weren't actually, and of course they were trying hard, but what's really changed, I think, with this organization now is the sense that they want to be the best organization in the game, and that they're spending the time and energy and money to do it.
This will go down as one of the most memorable World Series in history. What will you remember about this team?
I'll remember the fact that they never had a Cubs moment, like that they never had, in game 1 of the LCS when they gave up the lead and were tied. Montero came back and hit the home run. When they blow the lead in the World Series, Cubs history would indicate that once they blew that lead that they'd never come back, right? That's the moment that a Cubs fan anticipates his or her whole life. And the fact that they came back to win that game, like, they weren't Cubbish about it. They held it together. They were confident. They were loose in a way that fans never can be.
Well, perhaps a new chapter has begun for the Cubs and their fans. Mark, thanks so much. Congratulations to your Cubs.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, before we turn to the NFL and our usual weekend preview with Chris Canty and Ryan Aselta, let's take another look, shall we, at the scene in Chicago.
Their windowsill. But I don't think there was that panic that there might have been because in 07 or 08.
Well, they'd come back in San Francisco. They'd come back in L.A. They'd proven it. This team had proven it, so you're right. Before that,
But it was interesting to talk to some of the guys afterwards, because this is a team this is the most unflappable group of guys you've been. I mean, nothing has ever really rattled them. And I remember asking a couple of them afterwards, when that happened, did it change a little bit? They said, well, we weren't necessarily rattled, but we did maybe have to take a deep breath.
And a few tears.
Right?
Six more teams are on bye this week, including the Patriots, Cardinals, Bengals, and Redskins. The fantasy community as a whole is even more shorthanded than it was last week, making those borderline calls that we'll help you with now more important than ever. Derek Carr faces his toughest test of the season to date, but he should be in your lineup. Carr is becoming a star quarterback before our eyes, throwing for 2,321 yards and 17 touchdowns through 8 games. The Broncos won't make his life easy, but Carr should be up to the test. He is turning himself into one of the truly matchup-proof quarterbacks in the league. Russell Wilson is no longer a must-start quarterback. He's 27th at the position in total points, trailing the likes of Brock Osweiler, Case Keenum, and Ryan Tannehill. Wilson hasn't been fully healthy since hurting his ankle week 1, and he may not get back to full strength until next season. Stay away from him this week. Tim Hightower has earned himself a committee role in the New Orleans backfield, and that should be enough to get him into fantasy lineups this week. Hightower ran for 102 yards on 26 carries against the Seahawks last week in relief of Mark Ingram. He'll have a much easier matchup on Sunday with the Saints visiting San Francisco. The 49ers have allowed the most total points and points per game to running backs this season. Rashad Jennings should be on more waiver wires than he is in starting lineups this week. Simply put, Jennings and the Giants' run game have been terrible all season. He has 67 yards on 35 carries in his last 3 games, which comes out to 1.91 yards per carry. The Giants are last in the league in rushing, averaging just more than 70 yards per game. The matchup with Philadelphia isn't great, but that really doesn't matter. The Giants just cannot run the ball, making Jennings irrelevant in nearly all fantasy formats. Steve Smith may return for the Ravens this week, but Mike Wallace should still be in your lineup. He has 43 targets over Baltimore's last 4 games, catching 25 of them for 324 yards. Wallace is the team's best deep threat, a skill that could come into play against his old team, the Steelers, on Sunday. The bet here is that Ben Roethlisberger's return will force the Ravens to focus on the aerial attack in an effort to keep up with one of the league's best offenses. Wallace would benefit from that type of script. Jeremy Maclin is the 45th ranked receiver in standard scoring fantasy leagues through 8 weeks. The nominal number 1 receiver on the Chiefs has just 30 catches for 376 yards and 2 touchdowns this season. Maclin hasn't topped 80 yards in a game and has scored fewer than 5 fantasy points 3 times. As is the case with Russell Wilson, it's time to recalibrate his standing fantasy value. He's no more than a low-end wide receiver 3 and belongs on your bench this week. Eric Ebron returned a week ago after a 3-game absence because of knee and ankle injuries. He caught 7 of 10 targets for 79 yards, marking the 4th time in 5 games he had at least 50 yards or a touchdown. Last week, the Bears used Zach Miller early and often, with the tight end finishing the game with 7 receptions for 88 yards. Ebron can follow that exact path on Sunday. Dante Moncrief reigned on the Jack Doyle parade last week, returning from his shoulder injury and taking away targets from the tight end. Dwayne Allen appears to be on his way back to the field, which would likely take another chunk out of Doyle's volume. He's a bad bet this week now that Andrew Luck's cupboard is once again fully stocked. Finally, those of you on the defense carousel should hop off in Green Bay. The Packers' pass rush has produced more often than not, totaling 19 sacks in 7 games. The Colts, meanwhile, have one of the league's leakiest offensive lines. The Packers are favored by a touchdown and are at home, contextual factors that typically serve a defense well. They're a top 7 option at the position this week. That'll do it for the Week 9 edition of Stardom or Sit 'em. I'll see you all next week for waiver wire advice. Until then, this is Michael Beller wishing you good luck this weekend.
All right, we're back with Chris Canty. We're going 4 downs this Friday, Chris. And first down, we start with protecting the passers. The NFL VP of Officiating, Dean Blandino, says he could see expansion of replay to include quarterback protection. Now, Blandino told Pro Football Talk, quote, "It's been discussed at length, and anytime we have an opportunity to get the call right, we think that's a good thing. And the way the technology is advanced, we can introduce it and implement it more seamlessly in the game." Now, Blandino also said the use of an 8th official could help referees avoid missing quarterbacks getting hit in the pocket. You see the quotes, you see the replay, and the 8th man. Two different sides of this, Chris. Let's start with replay. Do you think replay should include hits to the quarterback?
Well, I think it should. I think replay can be expanded. Anytime you have a chance to get the call right, I think you've got to do that. It's such an integral part of the game, the officiating. It protects the integrity of the game, and I think the NFL owes it to the fans, the players, the members of the clubs to do the right thing here and try to get the calls right. So if you can expand replay and do that and protect the quarterbacks in the pocket and offer those things in terms of being able to identify infractions and what's not an infraction, then I think they should do so.
All right, second down. What has happened to the Minnesota Vikings? Offensive coordinator Norv Turner resigns after the Vikings loss to the Bears. That once dominant defense all of a sudden looks pedestrian. Chris, what have you seen from this Vikings team that's going so wrong right now?
Well, it's on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, the offense is putting a lot of pressure on the defense and the special teams. They haven't been able to move the ball. They haven't been able to flip fields and take advantage of short fields and scoring opportunities. Sam Bradford has been getting hit a whole lot. The offensive line really hasn't played very well. The running game, Matt Asiata and Jerick McKinnon, they haven't gotten going. And it's because of the offensive line primarily. Mike Zimmer came out a couple of weeks ago after their loss to Philadelphia and called those guys soft. And that's what you see on tape. They're a group that's getting pushed around right now, and it's hard to be good offensively when your offensive line is struggling. 31st in the National Football League. It's hard to win games when your offense is underperforming like that.
How much would you have liked to go against this type of offense that's struggling right now?
Oh, we call this a stat game. So when you're going against an offensive line that's like this, struggling, and a quarterback that's a little trigger shy, we call that a stat game.
All right, Vikings take on the Lions this Sunday. Third down, the best rivalry in football, possibly. Steelers take on the Ravens on Sunday. This marks the 41st meeting all time between these two teams. Now, Pittsburgh leads this series 21-19. You know, they say a rivalry, in order for it to be a rivalry, two teams have to have won. Well, both of them have won Super Bowls, obviously. Very even over those 41 games or so. You've been a part of it. Is this the best rivalry in the NFL?
No question about it. The best rivalry in pro football when you look at these two teams, very evenly matched. It's always going to be a close game when it comes down to Steelers, Ravens. In the Harbaugh era of the 16 games that they've met, 12 of them have been decided by 3 points or less, so I wouldn't expect anything different this Sunday. Now, will Ben Roethlisberger play is the big question. Either way, I think the Ravens' defensive front has to make life miserable for whoever's at the quarterback position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's got to be where it starts for the Ravens, limiting that offense, keeping the ball out of Antonio Brown's hands because he is a game wrecker.
All right, fourth down, RESPECT. The Falcons are now 6-3 after last night's win. The Raiders are 6-2 heading into Week 9, but neither team gets much love when it comes to picking contenders. Chris, should we be giving more respect to the Falcons and Raiders at this point?
The Raiders are an upstart group. You know, they're a young football team trying to figure it out, trying to figure out how to win. They're in a tough division, the AFC West, possibly the toughest division in football. And then you look at the Atlanta Falcons. Last year, they started out hot. They were 5-1, but then they floundered. They only went to 8-8. So it's a team that struggled on the back half of the season. So for various reasons, teams are looking at these two teams and saying that these guys have struggled. They haven't necessarily done the things that you would expect division-leading teams to be able to do in the past. So they want to see, it's a show-me approach. They want to see those teams do it over the course of a 16-game regular season. So I think that's where we're at as far as these two teams are concerned. Now, the Raiders have a prime opportunity. This is the litmus test, playing the Denver Broncos on Sunday Night Football primetime. The whole world will be watching. Here's a chance for them to make a statement.
Who has the edge in this big AFC West game?
I'm going to say the Denver Broncos have the edge. When you look at it, it's the reigning defending world champions. They've been there. They've done that. They've played in a lot of big games, and defensively, they're a lot better than the Oakland Raiders. So I'm going to always choose good defense over good offense.
I like the Raiders in this game. I told you that. I'm sticking with it.
Okay.
Either
right,
way,
we'll see.
It is a big one on Sunday.
I'll tell you I told you so on Monday.
I'll wait to hear that. Maggie?
Thanks, guys. Well, this Sunday is the New York City Marathon, and one runner who has a long history with the race is American star Meb Keflezighi. Earlier this week, he stopped by our studio and spoke with Ryan.
All right, Meb, it's Marathon Week here in New York, and quite the honor for you, a race that you've won before. This time you're going to be the Grand Marshal, just the 4th time in the race history that you will have a Grand Marshal there. What does that mean for you to play this role in Sunday's race?
Oh, it's always great to be back in New York to run the race, but this time around I'll be honored to be the Grand Marshal with my fellow teammates from the Rio Olympics, both men and women. It's going to be different, but at the same time, I'm so excited to be back here.
24 marathons. You won New York, you've won Boston in 2014, 3 Olympic marathons. Is there an accomplishment in your career that you hold a little higher than the rest?
I know I'm in New York and I won the New York City Marathon. That's my personal Olympics, but it's hard to top the Boston victory of 2014 after the bombing. And I really wanted to do that badly, and just to chant something positive, greater than yourself, to be able to just chant the Boylston Street, the finish line for catastrophic 2013 to something positive. And you can want it, you can desire, but to come together for me, that's the most meaningful victory of my career.
And you did that in your late 30s. I mean, how much of an accomplishment was that to do it at that age, that stage of your career?
I was 2 weeks shy of my 39th birthday when I won the Boston Marathon, and most people, experts, had the less than 1% chance of winning. It was the deepest field ever, and 19th fastest time, so the chances were not good. But when I have the victim's name on my bib and trying to do it for the victory for all of us, I was just, you draw inspiration and you just dig everything. They had the slogan, Boston Strong. I want to give them Meb Strong, give everything and live with the consequences of the outcome regardless. And everything came together. I feel blessed to have that opportunity.
Yeah, the beauty of sports right there. You're now 41 years old. How about your training now? How has it changed as you've gotten later on in your career and now into your early 40s?
Well, it's a great honor to be in the sport for a long time, but there's always aches and pains that I'm dealing with. But nutritionally is huge because you are what you put in your system, and in terms of training, the hardest part at this point is to staying healthy and to use KT tape for me to be able to support my muscles, ligaments, and it's huge because there's always you pushing the envelope, and you wanted to be competitive for one more year or 2 more years for me, and I'm living in the age, so I need all the support I could get, and they do that for me, KT tape.
Let's get some advice for someone who's looking to get into running, maybe intimidated by the sport, saying, I can barely walk a mile, let alone go out and run a 5K. What advice would you give them to get up there and get running?
I tell a marathon is a metaphor for life. It's stages that you have to do. The hardest part about getting somebody started is putting your shoes on, getting out the door. If you're getting out of the door consistently for about 3 weeks, you're going to get hooked. But don't look at the journey of 26.2 miles. So start with a 5K or run, walk, and then to the 10K, eventually to half marathon. And then eventually you should try 1 marathon in your life, and after that becomes optional. The first time I did New York City Marathon was in 2002, and I hated it. I never wanted to ever do it again. But, thank God for short memory. But you learn from your mistakes, and you improve every time that you can.
You mentioned some of the products you're using to help you later on in your career now. How about what you're doing to help runners out there and some of the things that they can use to as they try to succeed in the sport?
So I've been very fortunate to have great sponsors, but for the middle of the pack, the back of the pack, or really myself, KT Tape is there to be able to support you, train stronger, finish stronger, because at the end of the day, it's all the support that we can get for our ligaments, muscles, and joints, pain relief, and things like that. It's just, push the envelope, but at the same time, there's a lot of great product out there. And if you're looking for some support for your muscles, go to KT Tape.
All right, should be a great weekend in New York with the marathon, and a little different for you this year. You're going to be catching a ride in this marathon rather than running the 26.2 miles. Meb Keflezighi, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck to Meb this Sunday, and here's a look at more of what to watch this weekend. This is SI Now's Weekend Drive presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Our first stop, the Big Apple. Over 50,000 runners will traverse the 5 boroughs for the New York City Marathon. Someone to keep an eye on is professional runner Sarah Hall.
I'm feeling really excited. Yeah, I feel calm in that I've run a few marathons already this year, so I feel I don't feel necessarily like scared of the distance. Like you definitely respect the distance and especially the challenges of this course. But I think I got the rookie scared out of me.
Sarah's husband, Ryan Hall, is a former U.S. Olympic marathon runner, so hopefully he's passed along some encouragement and coaching. Next up, let's head to Columbus, Ohio, where Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes will host the Cornhuskers in a top 10 matchup that has Big Ten championship implications as well.
I just think for the long term, I think it's great. I think the fact that you're in street fights, I think last week's game was come from 10 points down at Wisconsin. I don't know if ever, I bet you can count on one hand in the history of that stadium how many teams have done that against that team. Very good team. So, I mean, it's all good. We got a tough schedule this year, and our guys had a very good practice today, and it's part of the game.
Meyer's track record against top 25 teams is stellar. He's 14-3 since taking over the Buckeyes. Lastly, to the NFL and Oakland, California, where the Broncos and Raiders will meet for the first time this season, with both teams tied atop the AFC West. Oakland quarterback Derek Carr is coming off his franchise record 513 passing yards. How will his top-ranked red zone offense fare against the Broncos' D?
They're one of the best defenses in the NFL, let alone this year. But for the last however many years, they've been one of the best that we've ever seen. In this league. So there's always a good challenge for us. But we're definitely looking forward to it.
Carr is looking for just his second career win over the Broncos. Another big day, and you could start hearing the QB's name mentioned in the MVP conversation. And that's what's in store for this weekend. It's a jam-packed weekend, and that's going to do it for this Friday edition of SI Now. We'll see you back here on Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. But until then, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. Here's one last look at the Cubs' victory parade. Enjoy it, Chicago. Party on.
Multi-million-dollar television corporation, not a single monitor to be found anywhere.
None.
That is terrific.
It's on our personal phones, and they sort of don't work. Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of comes in and out.
Well, they provided you a charger, I assume. No?
We do
No,
have
we
your
brought
own
our
BYO.
charger.
Okay.
BYOC.
Yeah.
Let's go to Sarah Jenner.
And it's pink.